2022 Formula One season predictions. I spent 3 hours on my stream doing my predictions, and I'll be splitting the videos up into 3 parts. My constructor standing predictions, my teammate head-to-head predictions, and my driver standing predictions. This video is for the constructor standings. All 3 videos will be uploaded back to back on the YouTube channel leading up to the first race this season. So be sure to check them all out on the YouTube channel if you haven't already. All right, let's get into it. Hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and be sure to like the video if you enjoy. Let's get into it. So I've tried to map out in my head like what I think this season's gonna be like. It's so hard. It is almost impossible to predict. You know, we've got new regs, new cars, new drivers. Some drivers have adapted to regs before, some haven't. Like, some teams have had to deal with a lot of reg changes, some haven't. The budget cap, how big of a part is that going to play? Testing was all over the shop, but I'd say I'm pretty happy with my predictions. But you know, I'm bound to be wrong. But yeah, I still think the top guys will be in their own league this season. I still think, you know, the guys with the big money will be near the top still. But I think the backfield is going to be the big change. The midfield backfield is going to be all over the shop. And I generally think it's going to be back and forth depending on the race, depending on the tracks. I also think the season's going to be way more reliant on driver skill and performance. In previous years, I think the cars looked a bit... I think the better drivers are going to shine and the worst drivers are going to fail. And also, the big thing I found from testing was there's a lot of teams who are already near their times from 2021, which is huge. So I think a lot of teams are going to make strides this season. I don't want to see a team straggling at the back. I would love to see all 10 teams in a nice fight. Not saying all fighting for the championship, but just in a fight, in a nice group. And yeah, I'd love to see all of them doing better than they did last year. I'd hate to see a team straggling at the back again. That would be the worst. That'd be worse. Let's get into the constructors standings. Like I said, this was the hardest decision to make because I think every single team has the opportunity to do well this season. And I think every team's got something good about them. And I feel like every team's got something bad about them. Obviously, some more worse than others. So this season, I think last place in the constructors will be Williams. I hope not. But I just think their car is very different and a very simple car. And they've shown in previous years that they're very slow to develop over the course of the season. I mean, previous years they've had this wind issue with their car where it's so bad in the wind when the wind's heavy, and it affects the aero of the car so much. And I just feel like if they can't solve that in 3 years, they've shown that they're not able to develop their car. And how are they going to be able to deal with issues this year with the new regs? They were very quiet in testing. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I'm not going to lie. I initially had Williams in 7th place. And then as I did some more research, looked at the times, looked at the data, looked at a few more like opinions going around the paddock, I was like, wow. I don't know why I put Williams so high. I think because they were so quiet in testing, in my mind, I just like put them high. But really, they haven't shown me any reason why they'll be higher than 10th at the moment. And that's a hard thing. I don't know. Also, they have no experience in this team. Their team principal, team boss, is quite new within the last few years to that role. Latifi's obviously only been in the sport for 3 years, getting mugged off by Russell. He's a rookie. He's not had to adapt to new regs before. And Alex Albon has only been in the sport for 3 years himself, out of the sport for a year as well, his first year at the team. I can't see them being higher than 10th. But yeah, I had to pick a team last, and I just think Williams is going to get the least amount of points. So next up, I've got Aston Martin. I know a lot of people probably aren't going to agree with me on this, but especially considering how high of a budget Aston Martin has, but I have very minimal faith in Aston Martin this season. I mean, first off, just looking at testing, that car is undrivable right now. Both drivers complaining about it. Understeering into every corner, constant lockups. Now, on one lap pace, that car looks pretty good. I reckon if they can get the development going on the car, solve their issues, and the rest of the season, hopefully get some good results. But right now, I see this car as Haas 2020. It seems like a decent qualifying car. Like it's got a lot of things going on with it that Aston Martin can't control the variables on the car. But it has potential. But my biggest problem is because they've got all these problems on the car right now, their progress in 2021 gives me no hope that they're going to be able to develop this car in 2022. I don't think they developed the entire year. They fixed the problems, but they were still very, very slow. Now we've got Otmar leaving. I mean, that's a bad sign, you know. I just feel like Lawrence is just throwing money at the team and seeing what sticks. Throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. That's the saying. He has got a 5-year plan, so I do definitely see this team in 5 years progressing. But right now, you know, they're still building their factory. They're still using Racing Point facilities, staff. They're just throwing money and hoping it works. And I just don't think the progress last year was great. And the biggest problem is another big problem as well. Mike Crack just came on board, which is their new team principal, or, you know, replacing Otmar essentially. So the guy who made the car for 2022 worked on it the entire year, left, leaving Mike Crack to come in. I love saying that name, by the way. Mike Crack coming in last minute to work on this car. How are you meant to figure out what's wrong with your car if you didn't build it and you don't know what's going on? You know what I mean? By time Aston Martin figure out their car, start solving the problems, start progressing, decisions start getting made, it's already going to be too late in the season. Not to mention, different other Mercedes-powered teams have gone a completely different approach. Williams, Mercedes, McLaren all have very skinny side pods. Meanwhile, Aston Martin have this huge side pod, vents. It's completely different car to the other Mercedes cars. And I don't know, that's a worry as well. The other thing to mention, in 2020, they finished third. Racing Point obviously finished third, which means in 2021, while they were developing the car, they had the third least amount of wind tunnel time. If you didn't know, it's reverse wind tunnel time, depending on Constructors Championship. Meaning they get third last amount of wind tunnel time, which is a lot of time for especially a team like Aston Martin, where, you know, they kind of lack the facilities and the experience over the teams like Mercedes and Red Bull. In 8th place, I have got Alfa Romeo. This team is going to have a good car, but I think Zhou is going to let down delivering points for the constructors. So first year in the sport, having to adapt to the car. I mean, obviously he's got the benefit of not having to readapt from, you know, the previous year, but it's still a car that is shown to be very hard to drive. But talking about the car real quick, they had a lot of problems at testing. They broke down a lot. I think Alfa Romeo have gone for the big side pod approach, just like your Ferraris, your Aston Martin, your Haas. But I think out of the four, they've got the least amount of detail. They've literally just got this big fuck off side pod and some floor. I don't see little bits sticking out. They chuck the vents on later on in Spain testing. Even the rear of the floor just doesn't look like there's too much development. They've definitely got to develop that car more, because it looks like it's lacking. Hey, at least in my opinion, they've got the advantage on Aston Martin in the sense of they have a car that's kind of drivable right now. This team's benefit is the experience within it. So 2021, they had the help of Gio and Kimi developing that car. You know, Gio's been in the sport for 3 years, at that team for 3 years. Kimi's been in the sport for fucking too long. You know, helping develop Alfa Romeo, that car last year. And now Bottas is hopping in the car to help develop it further. And yeah, they made really good progress in 2021. I think at the start of the year, they're probably second, third worst team on the grid. And by the end of the year, you know, Gio was qualifying 7th in some races, and Kimi was finishing the points. Like, they had good development year. So that gives me confidence that they can do well this year. Okay. Next up. Now, I don't want to put this team here. I'm not on the train. No. I'm not on the train. I'm not on the Haas train. I'm not. But I put Haas in 7th. I still stand by my point of Haas haven't shown me anything to give me faith in them. They don't have my trust, right? But their car looked good at testing, and their car looks very, very well built. And the fact that it's well built and look good at testing, I think is a good combination coming into the season. I think they're going to have a very, very close fight with Alfa. I think Alfa Romeo versus Haas this season is going to be one of the best fights. I hope that's true, because that'll be sick. Magnussen versus Bottas. Yes, they had so many fucking problems. They might have too many problems to deal with. They might show up to every race of the problem, not be able to fix it, finish in last, retire. That would be the worst. But if they can solve these problems, solve their reliability, I generally think Haas could be in the midfield, best of the backfield. I think the biggest problem for Haas this year is they've done half the amount of laps that Ferrari have done. 400 less laps. That is 8 Grand Prix less than Ferrari. That is a lot of laps they've let down on, and this is why I really didn't want to put Haas this high. I wanted to put them 8th. I want to put them 9th. If they get it right, if they get the ball rolling at the first Grand Prix, they can keep that ball rolling throughout the season, hopefully. But we got to remember, they lack the experience developing the car. Last year, they had Schumacher, rookie, and Mazepin, rookie, and Fittipaldi, fucking useless in my opinion, developing that car. You gotta remember, Magnussen is great long term. I think towards the end of the season, he's gonna start getting some really, really good results, or decent results. Hopefully the car keeps developing. The reason why I've placed them higher than Alfa Romeo in the constructors is purely because I think they're gonna have such a close battle that I just don't think Bottas is gonna be able to carry Alfa Romeo hard enough to get enough points to outscore Magnussen and Schumacher. Next up, we've got Alpine. Much higher than I thought I would be putting them before the season, before testing started. Ocon's face looking quite chuffed there. But yeah, Alpine, just like the other teams, give me absolutely no trust that they're going to do better than they have in previous years. I think Alpine have a decent amount of problems right now. I mean, they've just lost Alan Prost. They've just brought on Otmar. Again, they've now got this new team principal who hasn't been a part of any of the development at the team. And now he's on board, needing to figure everything out, needing to, adjust everything. That's going to cause a lot of problems. Not to mention the other problems that they had at testing, and their car didn't look great at testing. The other problem is it's almost a known fact now that Alpine have the engine turned up to the max, and they'll improve the reliability later, which I think is going to be a great thing for Alpine later on in this year, later on in this during these regulation changes. When you take into account how good their development was in 2021, you can't ignore that. They went from back of the pack, not really getting points at the start of the year, to by the end of the year, both Alonso and Ocon finishing in the points consistently. They've shown their development is good. And let's be real, Renault, Alpine, have never really been the back of the field. They're always kind of like in that midfield, And I can see that again with these reg changes. I can see them being in that midfield again. They got experienced drivers, obviously Fernando Alonso, and Ocon's been in the sport for a very, very long time, even been at Mercedes for a while, so you can bring that knowledge over. I don't really have any other reason to put Alpine higher, and I don't have any other reason to put Alpine lower. So that's why they're smack bang kind of in the middle at 6th. So next up in 5th place, I have got McLaren. I think McLaren's going to take a little bit of a backward step this year. Going back to what I said about Aston Martin, I think throughout the course of this era or these regulation changes, I think in a few seasons time, McLaren will be a top team. But as of right now, McLaren aren't confident. I'm not confident. The pundits aren't confident. The drivers aren't confident. And what we saw at testing doesn't give off a good sign. But I think, at the end of the day, they're McLaren. Just like Alpine, they've got the facilities, they've got the money, they've got the staff. They'll always be a team in the midfield. But whether they'll be pushing for wins and podiums this season, I'm not sure. Maybe if they get lucky. But yeah, I think they're going to definitely be starting the season off the back foot. They had such a good testing at Spain, and then it completely went south at Bahrain. But it took them 3 days to solve that brake issue. But even if it does get fixed, I don't think that car will be in the top 3. I think it will still be fighting, just like last year. I think similar position to last year, it will still be fighting on the verge of trying to get there. And if Daniel Ricciardo ends up not being too well at Bahrain, that's going to set them off on an even worse foot. Sometimes little things like that can really set you back a few races. So yeah, just don't think I can rate them higher than that right now. And once I talk about the next team, you'll see why. Now, this is probably my biggest out there pick. To be honest, I don't even think this is that out there of a pick. But I have got AlphaTauri to finish 4th in the constructors. Now, let me explain. AlphaTauri, this is their year, and they're looking good. They made so much solid progress over the years. Their car has consistently been making strides up the grid. Gasly's consistently making strides as well. The fact that AlphaTauri is now not being a sister team to Red Bull, they're not taking parts. They're not taking as many parts from Red Bull. They're developing their own car. And the fact that their car still looks very similar to the Red Bull is a great sign, because obviously I think the Red Bull is going to be really, really good this year. I think AlphaTauri has a good team to look at to know what direction to go in. They had a very solid car at testing. Not many problems. Big porpoising issue, which should be able to fix just like every other team. Drivers are comfortable. Both drivers saying they're comfortable with the car. I think AlphaTauri, just like last year, will start off very, very well. But this year, they need to keep it going. If AlphaTauri is in a championship fight with McLaren, I think every day of the week, Ricciardo will beat Tsunoda. But I think that AlphaTauri should be strong enough at the start of the season to allow Gasly to get enough points to, at the end of the season, have enough of a buffer that, Tsunoda finishing maybe one place behind Ricciardo, etc. should, even it out. I think it's an out there pick, but I have confidence. I have a lot of confidence in AlphaTauri. Unlike McLaren and Alpine, I have a lot of confidence in AlphaTauri. I think 3rd in the constructors, it is going to be Mercedes. They are on the back foot from their car at Spain. They showed up to Spain with a somewhat half fake car. That is going to backfire on them. There was so many issues at Bahrain for Mercedes. There was even a lot of issues at Spain with their car, to be honest. But keep in mind, I'm mentioning all these issues with Mercedes and I've still got them top 3. I still think they're a top 3 team. I just don't think with their current issues and the current look of their car, I don't think it's going to be able to fight Red Bull and Ferrari, at least for the first few races this season. All right, let me finish talking. But we all know Mercedes is the best at developing their car over the course of the season. I see a lot of people obviously saying that Mercedes is bullshitting, not saying their car is bad and it's not in testing. And don't get me wrong, they probably are bluffing a little bit, but whether they're bluffing or not, ignoring what Mercedes say, Ferrari says about them, what the pundits say about them, just looking at testing. I watched all 8 hours of all 3 days of testing and I looked at their car and it was locking up constantly. It was understeering. That is not a usual Mercedes. Unless people genuinely think that Mercedes is faking locking up, faking their porpoising, faking sitting in the garage for an hour, you can't tell me that Merc is a good car right now. And by time they catch up to Red Bull and Ferrari, it'll be too late for the constructors. But I see them competing for wins. But yeah, at the end of the day, the Merc dominance has to end at some point, and I think it'll be now. I think it's the perfect time. Ferrari look great, Red Bull look great, and Mercedes don't look that great. So yeah, we'll see. Before we get to the top 2 teams, I think Mercedes a little bit is going to be out of it, but the whole top 3 is going to be down to the drivers. I think it's going to be a great year. I think these cars are going to be a lot down to the driver's performance. And I think there's a clear team that has a great top tier driver lineup. There's one that has the car built completely around one driver. And that's Red Bull. So I put Red Bull in second solely for that reason. I don't think Red Bull is going to be able to get enough points through Perez. That car is solely built around Verstappen. And I think Perez is once again going to struggle. He showed that last year. Who knows? It's a brand new year, so anything could happen. But he couldn't do it last year. I don't think he's going to do it again this year, especially now with a third team in the fight. Again, last year was just Merc versus Red Bull. Now it's Merc, Red Bull, and Ferrari, hopefully, in that fight. Talk about Red Bull as a team, though. Car looks so fucking fast and stable. Them and Ferrari are the 2 best teams on the grid. They're the 2 teams to catch right now. But aero is just Red Bull's specialty, and that's pretty much what the regs are about this year. It's all down to the aerodynamics. And, I mean, look at it. Spain testing, they looked all right. Bahrain day 1, day 2, they looked all right. And then boom, day 3, they show up with a brand new package. Their car looked completely different. No understeer, no locking up, no porpoising, high rate car, hitting all the apexes. Car looked phenomenal with one update. Mercedes could bring that. AlphaTauri could bring that. Any team could bring that to the first race, any race this season, and completely change their car around. That's what's so exciting about this season. Whilst other teams are focusing on their car overall for the season, I think Red Bull will be able to focus on their packages for each race. And they're always, just like any of these top teams, they're really good at developing their car throughout the season. Not as good as Mercedes, but they're very, very good at doing it. We don't really need to build it up too much. We all know who I've put in first. That is Ferrari. Maybe it's a bit of copium, but I think looking at facts, I've written a lot of dot points, right? But number 1, Constructors Champion this year will be, hopefully, Ferrari. Reason being, most laps of testing. No issues at testing. 0. Now, that can be a problem. They've had it so perfect in testing that they might show up to Bahrain with a problem. Whereas all these other teams are having problems at testing that Ferrari might run into that issue that another team's already fixed. So that is a problem. Or maybe they're just fucking so goated that their car's so good that it has no issues, genuinely. Their wide car, another little thing you got to put on Ferrari this year as well. Their car is so fucking wide, it's bound to be slower in the straights. That was the better approach in 2021. Red Bull with the high downforce car was beating the Merc with the low downforce car in most races. And I think Ferrari, and that's another reason why I think it will be Ferrari versus Red Bull this year in the constructors standings, is because they'll have a car that can compete at most races, whereas Mercedes will only be good at those 6-7 tracks where it's really, really, really low downforce. I mean, other reasons why I've got Ferrari at number 1. I mean, Mattia didn't attend half the races last year and they still finished 3rd in the championship. He was so dedicated to making this 2022 car. Another reason is they finished 6th in 2020, which meant they got the 5th most amount of wind tunnel time in 2021. That's huge. Red Bull and Merc are getting the least amount of wind tunnel time in 2021. Meanwhile, Ferrari is getting the 5th most. It's almost like if Ferrari show up with a good car at the first race, right? Just like they did in 2017 and 18 with Sebastian Vettel. If they show up with a good car and compete in this championship, they choke it, it's going to be it's going to be even more embarrassing because they've been working towards this for so long. In 2021, Red Bull and Merc were focusing on a championship. So Ferrari has just had even more time, being even more relaxed, focusing on 2022. So yeah. And I think they've got the strongest driver pairing on the grid from experience, talent, pace, qualifying, consistency to a degree. I think they're the best pairing on the grid. And I think combine that with a good car, that's why I'm putting them above Red Bull in this championship. Even though I think Red Bull Max could beat them in most races, I think Ferrari will just deliver enough points to finish first in the constructor standings. So, but we all know Ferrari choked previous years and they have quite slower development than Red Bull and Merc. It's almost like they're bringing parts to the previous year, the year after. That's how slow they are. Dude, just look at this. This is a championship winning team. From the suits to the drivers, just everything. They're doing it. They're doing it. Ferrari looks so consistent and stable. Yeah, I didn't even talk about their car. Their car just looked, again, like Red Bull, consistent, stable, reliable. Look good, look good.